Good afternoon. It has been a while out here in internet land. You've not heard from us at Behind the Curve in quite some time, but we are back and we're ready to go. I'm Andrew,
And I'm Matt.
and we are coming to you today about our creation processes. All right, so Matt, why don't you go ahead and why don't you lead us out here?
All right.
Because I know that you have much more complete notes than I do.
Okay.
So we're talking about our creation processes, and when we talk about that, this is a couple different things that go into creation as writers. So there's sort of our inspiration, our writing habits, our pre-writing, our actual writing, the finalization of the writing, and then the release of that writing. And these are all different stages of writing, and we hopefully will touch on all of them.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah.
I have sort of pre-writing process. I labeled it pastiche slash inspiration. So my writing process always starts with inspiration, since all my fiction so far has been pastiche based. And for those who don't know what a pastiche is, I don't know what as a word originates from. It sounds Italian, but it's the idea of like having several different influences in your work and kind of like showing them in almost like semi homages. So, for example, Star Wars is a pastiche movie. Virtually every Quentin Tarantino film is pastiche. I can't really think of a good literary example, and it would probably give more literary examples rather than cinematic ones. Um,
Mm.
I'm thinking of Alice in Wonderland. There's a lot of references to logic and fairy tales and things. So those are all examples of pastiches. So
I'd say I'd say a lot of genre fiction is very pastiche-y.
yeah, because you kind of have to read the genre before you can write the genre, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I go through a lot of media, probably way more than I should. That's not it. It's the difference between me and Andrew is that I read a lot and Andrew writes a lot, and I'm the complete opposite. You know.
Yeah, no, I try to be better at I don't always have the most time to read. I listen a lot. I don't necessarily read a lot. I
Yeah.
listen as much as I can. But
I've always preferred more visual media, which has less of an emphasis on writing, by and large. While Andrew is a novelist, not just a mere
yes.
writer, so he has to do probably has to do the most writing he would have to do outside of maybe like really complex gaming situations. So
Yeah. I tend to be an auditory person, so I like audiobooks and writing podcasts I tend to be involved with to some extent. So I enjoy those. I enjoy hearing people read writing, especially read their own writing.
that's hard because you almost have to be a voice actor on top of a writer. It's like interdisciplinary, you know.
I mean, reading your own work out loud does not need to be complex. You do not need to be,
Do you mean like a table read or like an audio book?
either.
Oh.
Either. I don't think, I mean, reading short form stories is something that's fortunately come sort of back into vogue, is reading your short form stories aloud. And I like that. I'm glad that we have that as an option because that makes my life a lot easier because I'm driving all the time for work. So
So, okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, like, you get your education through there, essentially. It's how
mm,
we moderns do it now.
indeed.
Yeah. And for my inspiration, it's not just fiction. It could be anything. It could be a trip to a family vacation in North Carolina. It could be an entire media franchise. It could even be like a set of small details in a Pixar movie that like the inception of an idea starts. And for
Mm,
me, I have tried to have high standards for what I choose to ultimately create because I try to be mono project, which has been a little bit difficult, but I've gotten a bit better at it. I mean, a piece of fiction is worth my time if I can do certain things. So like things like exploring a certain type of person, exploring certain themes related to one another, and trying to challenge myself through writing a new genre sometimes. I'll only do it if it's deep enough and it's relevant enough. Like I can't just do like, oh, this is just about this one theme, this is just this one type of genre. Like I'm very pretentious in that way. I'm trying to like do something like the most pretentious idea usually wins when I choose what I'm going to create, essentially. I'm
Yes.
yeah.
Furry superheroes so pretentious.
It's much more than that. You're talking about my Just
I
Animals
know.
graphic novel series that I'm working on right now.
It's a lot. It's a lot to process. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so my inspiration tends to be.
I just wanted to say one more thing that I also
please.
try to do research first. So once I have a thing I want to make, I try to research it, and that's another set of inspirations. And as I live life, also that's my inspiration. Try to get realistic dialogue. So I always say research comes first, but that's not really true. Inspiration comes first, and then it's research because I have a new interest usually at that point. But yeah, that is my inspiration process.
Yes, that's one thing I would double down is research is important. Research sometimes gives me ideas. So if you're a writer and there's a topic you're interested in, why not learn a little bit more about it? It can bring you ideas. I've gotten ideas from my own research. An idea for a story that I don't have time to write yet, but I want to eventually was just because I was using Google Maps to explore Antarctica. It happens. So for me, I always try to base my inspiration around a scene. I always try to start out with a scene, and sometimes scenes just pop out. Maybe it's the background, maybe it's a setting that I see or envision, or maybe
it's kind of visual for you, honestly.
Yeah, or characters, or sounds, or even a phrase. I think a lot of my inspiration also comes from sometimes I'll see an idea in other media that I think could be done a lot better. And and that's the thing. There's nothing truly really original, but like it's if you take it from something mainstream, you're a hack. If you take from something obscure, you're a genius.
Yeah, it's kind of knowing what blends well too.
Yeah,
and like what. Yeah, that's pretty much says it all.
Yeah, loving bad movies is definitely a way to find some interesting ideas and try and execute them right. My current big project, you can definitely see my love for dystopian 80s sci-fi comes through in my latest big project. So that's.
I mean, yeah. That is a lot of like writing is like you show like how much of a fan of whatever you are, which to me it's like it's not as impressive because it's like anyone could be a fan. You don't really need any special stats to be a fan, except that you know things, you're able to memorize things. But when you're a writer, it kind of gives you more of a special status because it's like not just because you do, here's this little, isn't this a cute little homage to this? Isn't this a cute little homage to that? You take a story and you'll make it more serious. Like, Alan Moore did this with superheroes. Like he took superheroes and made them gritty. He made them adult. He made them interesting. He took timely comics like, I don't know, The Question and made him into Rorschach, where he took Superman and turned her into Dr. Manhattan. That's just genius. If you ever, well, you never read it, but a lot of our audience have, and they know what I'm talking about.
I hope they do.
Yeah, genre improvement is like kind of what writers kind of do with each other. Like they kind of try to push the genre and make it better. So the fact that you're kind of taking bad movies from the 20th century, that works. That's kind of not what I do, but it's kind of what all writers kind of do. They're trying to build a better mousetrap.
Speculative fiction could use a better mousetrap right now. Sci-fi is trying. Sci-fi is, I think, really trying to improve as a genre. Fantasy is still. Fantasy's kind of stuck.
Yeah, because science fiction is kind of like tied more to the human condition and to changes and things. Yes. I mean, like there is a whole thing with like retrofuturism,
Yes, which I mean I'm involved with, but it still does change with the times.
Yeah, so there's always something new to deal with. Like, what does fantasy? How does that evolve? Like, it just evolves, like how people like have a new take on it. And a lot of times it's well, a lot of times it will be like with some archaeological discovery, I guess, but like it's not just a different thing.
Yeah, no, right now let's be on the fantasy. Fantasy needs to get going, I think, a little bit on trying new things. Let's be honest, we can only rewrite the Lord of the Rings so many times, and shockingly, you're not going to rewrite it better than the original. You did not seamlessly and painstakingly build that world and make distinct languages and cultures. And when you do that, come back and we'll talk about rewriting the Lord of the Rings.
I mean, they
not every teenager can be the chosen one. Sorry, boys.
Yeah.
I think maybe intimate fantasy is more the way to go.
You mean like that focuses more on characters rather than the world?
Yeah. Like the world should feel real, like people really live here, but epic fantasy has come so much to define the genre that I think it may be actually a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes like I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, like to me, it's like what hasn't been done already. But like sometimes I think it's just being clever. Like with that, like if you ever watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, which you definitely should, like that really didn't really so much. It didn't invent new things as much as it like try to be realistic. It was like, okay, if this had this, what would be the natural outcome? So, example, like by the time of this show starts, there's the Fire Nation, the most powerful nation in like civilization in that world. Why? Because they discovered metal smelting before everyone else, and they discovered steam power before everyone else. So just little things like that. Like I don't think it's wholly original, but like it's like if you wanted to make a good one, the fact that the genre has been retread so many times, like if you didn't think up something like that, like a civilization that mostly has mastered something like fire technology, for it not to be the most powerful nation at some point, it would not work. Because it's like, well, why wouldn't it be? Things like that.
Right. Yeah. Yes, people really do have to live in that world when you make one. So, tell me.
We had writing habits itself with
Tell me about your writing habits.
I don't have much to say. Before I kind of was chained at a desk, with a desktop.
Right.
That was kind of like the old late 20th century thing. But like now that we have mobile phones, and I don't know why I haven't figured this out yet. I'm actually kind of better where I would just be in a chair, with like that's much more like comfortable long term. Encourages me to write more than just at a swivel chair. I think it has to do with me wanting to sit just like wanting to encourage me to sit more. And I also think it's great to have background noise and like be around people, because as much as I and not just because I want to like be helpful to my family, but it's just because how do I say this? Like I want to. It also like silence just can be too much for me sometimes. I really can't explain it, but I just want to be around people and that's for my brain just to be available. But yeah.
No, I do understand about the silence. Writing with pure silence in the background, I find extremely difficult as well.
Yeah, you lose track of time too, in my opinion.
I always lose track of time when I write. My writing habits are not the greatest. I usually struggle to get started. When I get going, I usually go pretty hard when I do go. But for me, getting going is a big struggle. There are sometimes I cannot force myself to sit down and which is part of the creative struggle. For me to do good work, I need to think about it more formally. Every once in a while, I'll be in a mood where I can't stop writing, and I'll pull out my phone, but I need to kind of think about it more formally. I need to have a decent setup to where
So
I
you're a
can sit
desktop
down.
guy, or at least a laptop
Yeah.
guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think the size of the screen matters to you?
To some extent, yes.
Then maybe like you like keyboards?
I love keyboards.
Okay.
I don't particularly enjoy typing on the phone. I can barely even stand typing on a tablet with an attached keypad, like a detachable keypad. For me, that's like incredibly annoying.
Yeah, I can't do that either. Too much craning.
Yeah, but those are my writing habits. I also like writing around people. I find it harder to write when no one's home.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Which I mean, since moving quite a distance has been harder. But yeah, those are my writing habits. I also try not to get too comfortable because sometimes I have been known to doze off while writing. So
Oh, I envy you. Never do that.
it happens. All right, so pre-writing strategies. So this is different from our sort of general writing strategies. Pre-writing strategies are how we organize ideas before doing the actual creative work.
Yeah, like for me, like I sometimes do like a start with a show Bible. For this time around, I really didn't because this project I'm working on is a graphic novel called Just Animals, and it's just basically our world, a little bit in the future with just some minor changes. I could kind of summarize them in like sentences for like certain entire aspects of the world. So I didn't really start with a show Bible. I almost did, but I decided not to do that.
Sure.
So yeah, me doing this show Bible, that kind of depends on like the complexity of the world. But yeah. I also, after I get that done, I start to do character profiles. And I think you do them too, don't you?
I do character profiles.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I also seem to see that they're more kind of my initial thoughts of what I think of the characters. So they usually slightly change as I write the outlines with things like names and background details, and things usually come together more as I write things. And that usually, when the big writing comes, is when I do outlines. I was explaining to you before the podcast started that like outlines are like,
Yeah.
how to say this? They kind of isolate certain details like dialogue. So if I don't get stuck on getting those details down. Just get down. I'm talking too fast.
A little bit.
I just focus on plot and a little bit of dialogue, maybe of just like generally what happens after something's been said. And of course, his character stuff is in there too. But that way, I can just focus on plot, and my outlines are basically like Wikipedia style plot synopsises with some minor notes. Since I'm using Google Docs, I can do like notes on the side. And another big idea for this is that if I have to change something, I can only change it. Usually, this one change affects the rest of the series, the rest of the outline, if not the rest of the series. So if I make one mistake, I only have to change like 4 to 5 pages, not 225 per main script. So that's basically it in a nutshell. That's how it's so far worked for me better than any other method. So I'm keeping it.
Yeah, I am somebody who as much as it fits my personality, I can't really do fly by the seat of my pants writing. I think especially when it comes to working in speculative fiction, you need to have like some world notes before you start writing. I mean, I've had a chance to form mine over years and years, which is great. Like me being able to form them over such a long time has been very helpful. But the format of mine. Usually I do a little bit of usually basically what I need to keep track of is I need to keep track of like the world expectations. And then I can work on those more about how they work in the specific context. So sort of I try to make broad notes and then focus on the specific context and what those would mean, Mm-hmm. For example, my upcoming project, surveillance is very commonplace. How does this change the city that these people live in?
Does this and like what characters react differently? Does this person
Exactly.
fight it? Why? What's the greater implication for their personality trait? What is it? What could it be? What was their past and upbringing like to have started this? Just basic stuff like that.
Yeah. And then I usually just have a document to keep track of the characters' backstories and some of the relationships. So in case they ever get stuck, and I can always add notes to that. And then I try to make a timeline just so I can keep track of what's going on, and also because not every story I write is linear. So yeah, and then dialogue I usually work out on the fly, unless I have a really important line. But dialogue I usually work out on the fly, or I'll take breaks to run through scenes in my head over and over again until I get dialogue I'm happy with.
You have told me you've acted out things before.
Oh yeah, I act out many scenes. Most scenes I think I've acted out. I noticed that helps a lot. At least me, it helps with emotional expression for characters. Because it's not just about what they say; it's how they say it. Not only how they say it, but how it translates to other human beings.
Yeah, because if especially you're going on like you're trying to go for like a brevity of the thing, you got to think of like how would they say it, and like would this come from this person? Like you're developing a voice for them as well as you're giving information to the audience. So
yes,
we'll have to consider it once, but it's a muscle that you exercise. The more you do it, the more you can.
Yes, writing is a muscle. Always remember that. Writing is a muscle.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the better it'll get. All right, so our next step here is script writing.
For you, this would just be writing.
Drafting. Drafting.
Yeah, I guess first draft. So for me, I have yet to do my script yet. I did start to do scripts at first, but then that didn't really work out for reasons I've already said. So I really don't have much to say about this because I haven't really done it much. I was working in a movie as my first project, and that was really hard. I just remember it being really hard, and because I didn't do the outlines first, so you had to think of everything at once. It didn't work out. So I also kind of have to think about Emergency Truce. It's a comic that before area, like divvy up action by panels, and then eventually do like a storyboard of sorts, and then give it to my artist. So other than that, I really don't have to say. I haven't yet to really do it, so I have yet to have wisdom of how to do that.
Understandable. For me, for drafting, honestly, my strategy is look, the first draft through is going to be a massacre. That's the way it needs to be.
So are you just trying to like get see how things look? Is that like your goal for most first drafts?
Let's get from point A to point B. See what we're missing first. Then we add that in, then we start cutting. We add, we cut, and then we start refining. But without getting to the end, or at least to a good point for editing. So like without getting to the middle point, like it's okay if you do your book in like sections to edit by chunk.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, most of the Redwall books are divided up into 3 sections or 3 acts. You can totally edit by act. But without a unit, you're always going to be missing something. So I always try to keep my editing in units.
You usually do chapters for novels, but now you're doing it by short story.
Yes. Short story, and I'm trying to work in some flash fiction too.
Okay. What's the difference between flash and short fiction?
Flash fiction is really short. It's like 1,250 words or less.
Wow.
I'm just hoping to use it to build a few bridges in the story. Just moments. Not even full scenes, just moments.
Interesting. So
If that's all it is, then that's all it is.
okay. So the next section is writing finalization. So I said I don't do anything special for this step. I do beta readers just like any other writer. I do try to get non-writers like, certain someone, even though, the person we know has editing experience anyway, but it's a good example.
Yes, you try to get me.
Yeah, I try to argue with, I end up usually arguing with my beta readers, but usually like sometimes it's kind of warranted because it's like the person we're thinking about is like why did you put this in? And like, okay, well, I'm gonna try to explain why I did. I don't always agree with them. That's why I try to get like a lot of variety of people with different backgrounds. So it's like sometimes people will take my side, some they don't. I haven't really done a lot of beta reading yet, so I really don't know again too much about this stuff, except that I'm starting to do beta readers, and it's a good thing. And many times beta readers come with good questions, so that's why I decided to use them. But most have anyway, most writers.
We do our best. I mean, so what do? I typically have one particular person who I show my rough drafts to, because they are not afraid to tell me if it's crap or not. Which is, if it's crap, I can go back to the drawing board. If it's decent enough, then we can edit it. And for editing, there are certain people that I do send out sample stories to. I trust my own writing group, and I trust at least certain people within my friend group to take a look at stuff. But I think I have my own hardest editor. I tend to be, and my initial reader, she's also a pretty good critic. So everybody find you a person who likes you but isn't afraid, but will not sugarcoat their criticism of your creative work.
So you seem like you're slightly different from me. Then you kind of have like a master alpha reader, so to speak, which is almost like your editor, but then you still have like a test audience in your beta readers.
Yes, I do have it. I do have what you could call an alpha reader, which is and also myself is I have worked very hard to improve my own editing ability. I don't think I'm a particularly good editor, but I'm a lot better than I used to be. Editing is also a muscle.
Yeah, I think editing is always, everyone, no matter how good they are, it needs an editor. They need a second pair of eyes, yes. That sort of a thing.
Everybody needs an editor. There's a reason why when you submit stuff, you need an editor.
Yeah. So then we have release promotion, which is kind of more meta writing. It's not the thing itself. Yeah. So I try to promote myself before I come out, taking through my socials as well as development. Sometimes I do a YouTube video about it. Maybe I'll mention something about my current project on this podcast. I'll try to tweet about it. I have a Just Animals, I don't know what the right word is, a hashtag I started. So there's that. Just so you know, I'll edit this out, but we have 10 minutes left and counting, so we'll probably.
All right, that's fine. We're close enough to the end. This is fine.
Yeah. So, and I also have, of course, DeviantArt, where I post concept art. That's usually, I'm more of a promoter than you are, which is kind of not as good because I'll have a bigger audience like maybe, but you actually get things done. So that's again the difference between me and you. I also plan to do a Patreon for Just Animals to actually have work in progresses and to have maybe a comic page, maybe even a whole month before it comes out. That's kind of my idea. So and maybe doing videos promoting the comic directly. So yeah, that's kind of and probably once I actually get the main comic, I'll do Google AdSense and show it on my account, my website first. So that's my plan. I plan to do this sort of thing in the future, more or less. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, so Matt's looking more at self-publishing. I'm looking at publishing through more traditional means. Authors Publish is one of the best ways to keep track of what magazines are accepting submissions. I've applied to a couple different literary journals. I'm still hunting down my first professional publication, but I mean it's a tough world to get your feet into. but it is one that I think is worth getting into. As for my, I don't particularly like doing social media. I just try to stay moderately active on Twitter and the writer sphere. My job is kind of every once in a while post something funny, retweet good writing points, stay in touch with other writers, and avoid saying anything terribly controversial. It's just a matter of being like, there's public outreach, and I'm here, and I'm at least part of the writing discussion. That's the goal. And Twitter is where writers meet. As much as I hate Twitter.
You do a little bit of Reddit, but that's more research.
I do Reddit, but Reddit's like research and
yeah.
I
not
go
promotion.
To get interesting things. Yeah. Because Reddit does have interesting things on it.
Yeah, you use the internet more to like get available, like minimally announce, like less know that like, hey, I'm out there, I'm working on something. When I edit, I'm gonna like update you like a journal, like what I do. More like, here's a way to buy the text in full. Hi, I exist. You could, if you really needed to, contact me for business inquiries. And that's pretty much it. Yeah,
Twitter is a cesspool.
Well, it's a time black hole too.
It is a time black hole. Social media is a black hole, just in general. It's I mean, in the end, is it probably a net positive for humanity? Yes. Do we need to figure out how to deal with it? Absolutely. But it's still a time sink. So, and then my other one is right now, I mean, as with most things for my bigger projects, I am looking for an agent. I do want to get my first novel after some edits. Basically, I think it's in pretty good shape. The first part, it just needs a new ending. The last chapter of my...
I don't quite agree, but then again, I'm not you.
Last chapter of my novel has been rewritten about 3 or 4 times, and it has yet to please the majority of the test audience. I kind of liked the last one. I didn't like the first one. I kind of liked the last one, but we'll see what we can do with that one. But yeah, so keep track of your agents, always keep up on what's due. Authors Publish is one of the best. Also, I follow a lot of agents on Twitter. Agents like to tell you what's up, when's up, who's up, and never sign up with an agent who makes you pay them. They should get their pay comes from your success. They get a percentage of what you accomplish. So never pay an agent up front. That is rule number 1.
I have 2. I don't know if you have questions for me.
I do. Yes.
Okay. If you didn't, that would be fine. But I guess I could start with mine. So for you, what is the number 1 fandom/fiction convention you'd like to go in order to promote your fiction? So like Comic-Con, just one example.
You know what? I would have to say that I would be aiming for something that probably looked either at more traditional fantasy role-playing, like maybe a Dragon Con.
Yeah, Dragon Con, I think they still exist.
Would be good, because I think I don't really look at much modern fantasy. I look at more what the people who originated the game were reading. So
Dragon Con have like, is it more like a tabletop RPG focus?
It is, but it's also general fantasy. So I feel like wherever the D&D old heads are hanging out, that's probably where I belong. Also, probably I think I would do all right at I'd probably do all right at a Cthulhu con, just because my style of writing and that I tend to focus on weird fiction. And also, you know what? I don't hate to say it, but I think Pittsburgh might be a natural selection for some of my stories.
Yeah, that's a big one, along with Chicago and Orlando, I think.
Yep. So Pittsburgh is not out of the realm of possibility. So why don't you ask me your 2, and then I'll ask you my 2.
Okay, so this is my second. This sounds a bit like a job interview question, but where do you see yourself in 10 years as a writer?
Hopefully with a few published books and a good short story base. I would love to have somewhat established in the field of literary speculative fiction. that's where I hope to see myself. I think I'm pretty well on the path, and I'm getting much better about showing off my writing to people publicly. So, you know, Lord willing and the creek don't rise. That's where I see myself. Um, One thing I wanted to ask you was, okay, so we talked some about genres.
Yes.
What genre could you never see yourself writing?
Oh boy. Never.
Yeah.
I can't. Romance is kind of like the least favorite one. Like I don't think I could do very
Right.
well on that. Anything that's like. I wish I had like a chart up in front of me. Like I could
No,
be
it's
like,
all right. Romance is the most popular fiction genre, which is hard to deal with sometimes.
oh yeah. A musical, I definitely couldn't write. I don't think I could write that.
That would be scary. Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I just don't think I can.
Sure.
Yeah.
And my part for my last question for you is, we're running low on time, but what for you is the hardest part of like writing dialogue? You mentioned that you said you felt like this is something you mentioned to me out of this, was you mentioned you sometimes feel like you have a hard time writing dialogue. What's the hardest part for you of that?
Just
And
convincing,
how do you, sorry, go ahead.
just convincing myself that it's real. Like sometimes it's like, or I think pacing, I think might be a number one too. It's like, and another thing, maybe even more than that, is just like trying to figure out a path that like I wanted to talk about this, and I had to open the scene with them starting to talk about something that will eventually lead them to this point, and then I need to lead them to this other point.
Yeah.
Because it initiates this action. I don't think I'm alone in that really, but
No, dialogue is really hard, and it involves listening and talking to real people a lot, which is not always the writer's strong suit.
yeah, just because the kind of work that writing involves. So yeah.
It's a challenge. Dialogue is a challenge. I worked really, really hard on my dialogue, and I still don't know how good it is. I know it was really weak when I first started out, and it got to the point that most people that look at my stuff say it's good, but it took me 5 or 6 years of running the same scenes over and over and over and over and over again.
What do you mean?
Yeah. All right. So I am getting the alert that we are running short on time, so we're going to have to wrap up for today. Again, this has been Andrew at Behind the Curve, along with
Matthew,
as well as Matthew. And we're going to be signing off for today. Thank you for those of you who stuck around. All right, we'll see you soon.